Hello there, let's jump into part 7 of our Día de Muertos series. We're going to talk about the elements of an ofrenda and a quick clarification. The altar is the physical structure and the ofrenda is what fills it. And sometimes I mix the words. When I mean altar, I say ofrenda, but I just wanted to clarify that difference. And every altar is made up of many pieces and each has a specific purpose. And if you've ever really looked at them, have you ever noticed that they always look beautiful, balanced? And it's because they're built on the 4 sacred elements, which is earth, wind, water, and fire. And traditionally, every ofrenda includes these 4 elements because for the indigenous people, they represented the world that we live in. But here's the thing, there's no single right or wrong way to make an ofrenda. Some are traditional, some are not, and that's okay. And if it's your first time, don't stress about doing it perfectly. And when you see other altars, ask questions, learn. And if you post your altar online, please be open to comments with corrections. It's all part of keeping traditions alive. And in the next 4 videos, we're going to dive into each of the 4 elements so you'll never look at an altar the same way. We have all seen these, but what do they really mean? Step into the world of Papel Picado in part 8 of our Día de Muertos series. Papel Picado means perforated paper. Artesanos will stack tissue paper and hand-cut designs with chisels and hammers. Some use machines now, but the traditional way is still by hand. And whenever you can, please buy directly from the artesanos, especially if you live in Mexico. You can find local artesanos in your area, and you may even find a class that shows you how to make papel picado as well. And if you want to be sure you're getting an authentic version, no 2 sheets are going to look exactly the same. And plastic ones are made by machine. And those have their purpose, like if you're using them for outdoor use because they're more resistant to weather. And again, this element also goes back to indigenous rituals when they used bark paper. But on the altar, papel picado represents air, one of the 4 elements we talked about in the previous video. And the way it moves in the breeze symbolizes the presence of spirits visiting from the other world. And we'll review the next 3 elements in the next videos. You'll also see these banners all over for all types of events. Each color and each design carries its own meaning. And overall, it reminds us that life is fragile. So the next time you see papel picado, remember it's not just decoration, it's history, art, and spirit woven into Mexican tradition. Let's jump right into part 9 of our Día de Muertos series about one of the elements for the altar. The indigenous culture's water was sacred. They honored Talak, the god of rain and fertility, that is sometimes confused with the god of agriculture, that is actually their brother. The Maya saw cenotes as portals to the underworld, and archaeologists have found offerings in the cenotes of Chichen Itza. And if you have not visited the Yucatan yet, cenotes are a very unique experience, and there's over 10,000 of them in the Yucatan. Water symbolizes purification, rebirth, and again, that bridge between life and death. On today's altar, 1 glass of water carries that legacy, because without water, you can't have life. And the water is to quench the thirst of those souls that have traveled. And no, alcohol does not count as water. It's a separate element, and we'll talk about that in a separate video. And this last image represents the people who died crossing the border from thirst. Today we talk about fire, the most dangerous of the 4 elements. Welcome to part 10 of our series. The Mexica believed the 4 elements were essential for life, which is why they are all on the altar. And like water, fire is part of the life cycle. It just demands a little bit more respect. And for the Mexica, since it moved upwards, the fire connected the humans to the sun and to their divinities. When the Spanish arrived, they replaced those open flames with candles. Now, when you're doing your altar, you want to have one candle per soul. And you can add extra ones for people who have been forgotten. And if you're making a pet altar, you can light that candle the midnight of October 26th. And then for your loved ones, you would light it before midnight, October 31st to the 1st. And then a word of caution. If you are using real candles, be sure there is nothing dry nearby that can catch on fire. You can use real candles when you're awake or when you're near your altar, and then switch to battery-operated ones in the evenings. The other option is the floating candles in the water that will burn out in the water. And also be sure that it's not like a really enclosed space that can cause intoxication. So we want to be sure that we protect the living while waiting for our souls to return. You have landed on part 11 of our Día de Muertos series, and today the focus is on the fourth element of the altar, earth. It's probably the most fun part of the altar, as it's traditionally represented through food, and who doesn't love food? The purpose of having the food is to nourish and ground the spirits after their long journey from the other world. And for the indigenous, food, of course, was more about survival, and it also represented the harvest time, which represents that cycle of life and death and how connected they are. And that's why on more traditional altars, you're going to see more fruits, vegetables, seeds, tortillas, and of course, pan de muerto, which we will dive into deeper in another video. But by placing those offerings on the altar, families are saying, you are welcome here. We've prepared a feast for you. And it's a gesture of love and connection across many generations, across many cultures. Preparing food is a love language for a lot of people. Part 12 of our series is about something very simple but important. For indigenous people, salt symbolizes not only purification but protection. The salt is actually to protect those that are coming, so they are not corrupted by us and our negative energies, so they have a safe return. Salt is often placed next to water, or sometimes you'll see it like in the form of a cross, usually on the bottom level, and it's also part of the earth element. And I've had people say they've noticed that the salt moves from the night to the day. Take a seat. We are going to talk about food in number 13 of our Día de Muertos series. Food is my favorite part. I'm a big foodie. So I'm always joking about what I want on my altar. And different from Papel Picado, el copal, el cempasúchil, the food, which is an earth element, is very personal to your departed soul. And I have a meme that I love. And it says, si la comida mexicana no es la mejor del mundo, ¿por qué somos los únicos que regresamos de la muerte para seguir tragando? And I love that one. There's the traditional meals, the atole for the drinks, pulque, tequila, mezcal, cerveza, but there's mole, there's the pozole, los tamales, and all that is part of the culture and traditions. But this is very personal. Whatever your departed enjoyed, that's what would go on the altar. And when you're building your altar, especially if you have little ones and you are remembering some family members that have passed, bring them into the fold. Because I think what happens in a lot of families, you don't talk about the departed because you don't want to make anyone sad. And the modern tradition of Día de Muertos flips that. And it really instills remembering the person that is no longer here and celebrating that life. And so with the little ones, for example, you could be like, hey, ¿qué comía abuelito antes de que se acostaba? And they'll be like, oh, él comía pan de dulce o se comía un cereal. Okay, let's get a bowl of cereal for grandpa and put it on the altar for him. And that way you are incorporating your kids into welcoming their ancestors back to the altar. So that's one way of incorporating them. Now, the indigenous back in the day, they weren't going to waste food. After the ceremonies, they would eat the food or share it with their animals or with other tribes or, the other people in their community. The same thing happens now. You will notice on some altars, people put plastic over your food. So that's an option for you. You put plastic over your food, and then at the end, or sometimes on the first and the second, you're eating that food, because Dia de Muertos is a two-way, right? They are coming to see you, but you are conviviendo con ellos. I don't even know how to say that in English. And so by you eating the food, it's like you are all joining the table together and enjoying that meal together. And you will see that a lot in cemeteries. You'll see people there all night long, and they're eating and they're playing cards and they're dancing and they're playing music, and it's a festive thing. Intimate, but it's still festive because they're celebrating someone's life. And food is a love language for a lot of people. And so I think that brings a lot of people together and brings them all to the table. Saludos a todos. Dia de Muertos has a lot of recognizable symbols, and one of those is pan de muerto, right? You see it and you know that it's for this tradition, this holiday. I am not going to show you how to make it, but we are going to talk about it in this episode number 14 of our series. Who can show you how to do it is our friend Mustafa, Good Gringa 101. Look her up. Cooking is her love language, and she is going to be sharing her recipe for pan de muerto. So she'll be able to hook you up with that. Now, I am going to go more into the history, the origin, some of the myths. And, we've all heard the myths of human sacrifices. And one of the origin stories of pan de muerto is when they sacrificed the princess and they removed her heart. They put it in these plant type seeds. I'll put the name of it up there because I don't know how to pronounce it. And then the leader of this celebration would then eat it. After the Spanish arrived, whether those myths are true or not, they brought over with them wheat. And the wheat helped change pan de muerto closer to what it is today. And the shape of the pan de muerto, it started off kind of the shape of a heart, right? It's round, but the roundness of the pan de muerto is that circle of life and death. And it is a vanilla bread infused with orange, sometimes anise. We'll let Sarah tell you guys how to make it, but then it's topped off with sugar. And the way it's recognized now didn't really take off until the 20th century and have its strong tie to the Mexican heritage. The other interesting thing, to me anyway, in the first video, we talked about how the Aztecs celebrated their version of Dia de Muertos in the 9th month, right? Because their months were 20 days. And then it got moved closer to All Saints Day and All Souls Day, which was celebrated in the Catholic Church in Europe. In Europe, on that day, November 1st and 2nd, they would also go to their tombstones and they would take bread and they would take wine and flowers. So when I learn things like that, it always makes me wonder where that line gets blurred on where tradition started. Just the blending of everything is something I've always found so interesting. Now, as you travel to different parts of Mexico, especially during this time period, you're going to notice the breads are slightly different depending on the state that you're in. Now, the traditional is the round one. That is the one that you see here. And the little bone-like strips symbolize the deceased. And then that small ball in the center represents the skull. And then the sugar that's dusted on top of it, that represents the sweetness of life. And in some ways, it is mocking death in some ways, and we're going to get more into the mocking of death in another video. In Guerrero, the bread is called pan bordado. In Guanajuato, they have ones that are all glazed with sugar. And I would love to hear from people from other states and what it's called where you're from. And pan de muerto is part of the earth element that we had talked about in video 11. And families typically place the pan de muerto either October 31st or November 1st on the altar. That's the day that you place it, depending on who you're honoring, if you're honoring children or if you're going straight to the adults. And as we talked about in the video, in the last video I think it was, when we were talking about food, pan de muerto is meant to be shared with your ancestors that have returned and with the people who are there waiting for their ancestors to come back and visit. About a week or so ago, maybe more, I had posted a video that I was in Soriana supermarket here in Tijuana, and they already had pan de muerto, but it was packaged and, you know, mass produced. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they're already, you know, selling it. And someone made a comment like, I could eat pan de muerto all year long. And it's true, pan de muerto is available all year long, and it's actually used for other festivities, not just for Dia de Muertos, especially the non-traditional ones that you'll see some pictures here as well. And again, if you are able to purchase it from a local panaderia and not somewhere that's mass produced, I'm not going to mention any of the big box names, but we all know them. Especially if you're in Mexico, you can find someone local that is making them. Purchase it from them if you don't want to make it yourself. And again, visit the Good Gringa 101 to learn how to make it. And thank you for joining us. And we are going to start going into the different levels of the altar. We have a few more videos about objects or elements for the altar, and then we'll get into that. Post your comments below, and I will see you soon.